And I see that Vanessa just turned hers off, but I did see her there, so we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome. All right. So I will call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. Oh, should I have done that before or after?
You're quite all right. Continue on.
Okay. So next is the approval of the agenda, I believe. So does everyone kind of agree to the agenda? Can I get a mover? Councillor Toso, and a seconder. So all in favor, all opposed? Okay. So are there any corrections or additions to the meeting that need to be done? No, everything looks good. Okay. Can I get a mover? Sunita, and a seconder. Vanessa. Okay. Is there any pecuniary interest at all? No, don't think so. Okay. Do we do delegations right now?
Through you, Chair, we don't have any delegations today and we don't have any briefings, so we can go ahead and get right into business.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to go to the first business item, which is the City of Kingston specific recommendations based on the National Council of Canadian Muslims recommendations.
Hello and good afternoon through you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So on February 1st, 2022, the City Council passed a motion directing this committee, the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, to review the National Council of Canadian Muslims policy recommendation on Islamophobia and provide City of Kingston specific recommendations to the council by the end of Q4 2022, where we are right now. Based on the NCCM recommendations, specifically for municipal government, there were few recommendations that we did some research on and worked on a feasibility and see how that would fit into City of Kingston's current programming and future plans. So we are recommending the following recommendation number 55, which is on passing municipal street harassment bylaws that are proportional and constitutional, such as the approach now being adopted in Edmonton after an NCCM initiative. Bylaws should also address clearly hateful verbal assaults and give authorities the ability to ticket and fine when necessary. Luckily, our legal department was already working on a public nuisance bylaw, which I will share shortly, which aligned very much with the recommendation number 55 of NCCM. And then the next recommendation, which was recommendation number 57, which was mayors should build anti-Islamophobia advisory council and circles while ensuring there's appropriate representation of diverse local Muslim communities, which is again connecting with an ongoing initiative that EDI office has been working with clerk office on increasing representation on committees and boards with the help of nomination committee, which I will be speaking shortly about. And then recommendation number 59, invest in celebrating the history of local Canadian Muslims and initiative through a concrete program that bring these figures and names to the forefront of local level recognition. Municipalities should fund events and spaces where there are accomplishments are celebrated. in a way that clearly shows that the Muslims have made real contribution to Canadian society and are far from violent um, caricatures that constantly make the news. Um, this is something that we worked with our heritage services and came up with some suggestions. And then the last recommendation that we are suggesting right now is recommendation number 61, which is develop models for training young Muslim leaders for the future, such as youth fellowship program in Toronto. I'm going to speak first on public nuisance bylaw. So uh, as I said that the National Council of Canadian Muslims recommendation from the National Summit on Islamophobia actually included a recommendation to pass street harassment bylaw with ticketing authority. As such, on June 29, 2022, Council directed city staff to prepare a public nuisance bylaw for Council's consideration. So this bylaw provides enforcement agencies with an effective tool to mitigate nuisance behavior that interfere with other persons' use and enjoyment of public spaces. Generally, public nuisance bylaw prohibits or regulates undesirable behavior like defacing or vandalizing property, discharging dust or smoke into the natural environment, feeding of wildlife, and screaming, shouting, or using abusive, threatening, or harassing language that interferes with the reasonable enjoyment of an individual or a group of people in a public space. Legal service staff have advised that NCCM recommendations related to a street harassment bylaw would fall under this proposed public nuisance bylaw, which would prohibit any use of abusive or harassing language that interferes with individual reasonable enjoyment of a public space, which is which includes but not limited to Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, racist, sexist, homophobic, and transphobic language. Uh, if the public nuisance bylaw is enacted by council, um, local enforcement agencies would have the ability to issue Part 1 provincial offense notices, which is also called tickets to the individuals who violate the bylaws. And legal service staff are currently undertaking consultation with the public, Kingston Police, and other municipalities with respect to this proposed public nuisance bylaw and will report back to the council in 2023. So this is something that is already in motion. The next section of the recommendation, which is uh, the anti-Islamophobia advisory councils and increase the representation, recommendation number 57. So we already have a plan in place for diverse voices for City of Kingston advisory committees, boards, and commission as part of the recruitment for public members appointments to both internal City of Kingston and external agencies, committees, boards, and commission. The clerk's department staff have reached out directly to community organization, neighborhoods, and association, and indigenous groups specifically representing a broad spectrum of Kingston residents. Included in these email communication and information, it's regarding the committees, board, and commission to which applications were sought and details of when and how to apply. Not only that, but also from EDI office, we specifically reach out to community partners and organizations and community leaders and community activists and offered them if there is a need for any assistance from our side, how we can bridge the gap of them applying for any of these committees, boards, and commissions. Um, and now let's move to the celebrating the history of local Canadian Muslims, which is Kingstonian Muslims. The Heritage Services has agreed to work with community partners to reach and develop content for a standalone niche case exhibit in the City Hall that focuses on community identified aspects of history of Canadian Muslims in the Kingston area. Research and design will occur in 2023 for installation in 2024. The niche cases at City Hall are actually temporary installations, usually remaining on view for 1 to 2 years, with a focus on expanding the history and stories that are shared as part of interpretation and program of Kingston City Hall as a center of community government and as National Historic Site. Heritage Services planning for future large-scale exhibition and educational program will also continue to emphasize cultural diversity, equity, and inclusion, including opportunity that could highlight the history and contribution of the Canadian Muslims. In connection to this recommendation, we are also highlighting the Islamic Heritage Month every year in October. Islamic Heritage Month is recognized in Canada, and this is the time to reflect and learn together about Islamic excellence, Muslim excellence in Canadian context, and the rich, long-standing contribution of Canadian Muslim people that they have made in literature, math, science, and history, not locally just, but also globally. The City of Kingston will recognize the month of October Islamic Heritage Month by illuminating the City Hall and Springer Market Square in green color and sharing educational information for its staff via internal email. We actually did that last year or this year of 2022, and we intend to continue doing that with the help of our communications team as well as facilities. The last section that I want to highlight is about the developing of the model for training young Muslim leaders for the future, like the Youth Fellowship Program in Toronto. So this actual Youth Fellowship Program was established by the City of Toronto. It's a non-partisan program which provides politically motivated students the opportunity to complete their academic studies with hands-on experience working with an elected government representative. Also placing staff with deep roots in Toronto's Muslim and Black communities in decision-making spaces that helps them understand the actual needs and also ensure that the substance, shape, and details of what Toronto's government decides better reflects community experiences. So we will be working on a feasibility to replicate this model for City of Kingston. And how we intend to do it is not just targeting the Black and Muslim youth, but we also intend to create sub-intersectional approaches to encourage other systemically excluded community groups to be able to be part of Youth Fellowship Program. So at this point, the staff is recommending their committee to that they recommend to the council that council encourage the city clerk to continue with its effort to attract diverse voices from the City of Kingston Advisory Committee, boards, and commission in response to recommendation number 57, which is build anti-Islamophobia mayoral advisory council circles and councils of the National Council of Canadian Muslim policy recommendation on Islamophobia. Also that council direct heritage services to develop a niche case exhibit in City Hall that focuses on community identified aspects of history of Canadian Muslims in the Kingston area for installation in 2024, and to consider the history and contribution of local Muslim communities in future museum exhibition and programming plans in response to the recommendation number 59, celebrating the history of Canadian Muslims of National Council of Canadian Muslim policy recommendation on Islamophobia. That council recognize October as Islamic Heritage Month going forward and direct the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office to coordinate with communication and customer services, customer experience, my apologies, and special events to recognize programming and communication accordingly in response to recommendation number 59, celebrating the history of Canadian Muslims of the National Council of Canadian Muslim policy recommendation on Islamophobia. That council directs the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office to conduct a research in order to establish a youth fellowship program in response to recommendation number 61, increase opportunities for young Canadian Muslims in city decision making of the National Council of Canadian Muslim policy recommendation on Islamophobia. With this, I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you very much, River.
Yeah. So Now is kind of the time where if anyone has any comments or questions, they can be directed to Mohammed or to myself. I have one that I kind of want to vote myself to do. So I really love the idea of the bylaw. I think it's really important that that is there and that it actually is targeted towards Islamophobia, because we've had instances of that, and it really needs to be targeted so we don't have that in Kingston. My question is, would there be capacity, or what are Mohammed's thoughts on, because my concern is that we have a bylaw and we have a fine, but we don't really have anywhere to go past that. Do we have any sort of education or any sort of model to kind of encourage anti-racism or perspectives? I don't know how that would go, but I just want to see it where it's not just that we're slapping fines on people, but that we're actually giving the opportunity to learn and become more respectful.
Thank you for the question, Chair Hill. What I can share definitely that we are working with different community partners to create a more holistic program that is not just focused on Islamophobia, but also focused on different other kind of discrimination. And once this bylaw is finalized, the intention is that it's not just going to be a bylaw that is just put out there, but there will be some opportunities for educating and training people and masses, and also it may connect very well with the anti-racism working group, which is a community-led working group that is in place with support of City Council. So there is an opportunity there as well. Thank you.
I think we may have lost the chair. I'm just gonna see if they're able to come back in. Just give us one moment, a brief pause, everyone. Apologies.
The joys of meet online meetings, eh? Oh,
There we go. Perfect.
Well, I'm super sorry about that. My internet just went out.
Quite all right. We'll continue forward.
Okay, where were we? I'm going to give the opportunity to Councillor Tozo to speak.
thank you. And this is my first meeting, and I'm delighted to be a member of this committee. So I would be, as a councillor, be absolutely happy to endorse all of these and vote for all of these motions through your chair. I have a question for Mohammed. What is, I agree that I think a bylaw for fining people for racist and bigoted speech is, of course, I think entirely appropriate, and any educational program would be there. My question is what is the currently existing legal framework for police or for other services to be intervened? Because a bylaw and fine are one part, but what is the other legal framework within which bylaw and police officers would be working within? Because I'm not familiar with that.
So I can safely say that there is not a lot for us under the municipal jurisdiction to implement anything or impose any kind of like ticketing or offense reporting, unless it's an actual threat. However, like once we will be bringing the detailed framework under the public nuisance bylaw, we would be able to speak more broadly about it. And the reason why this new bylaw is being constructed and like the consultation work is being done through legal service is because there was no framework that allows municipal governments to impose any kind of control on any situation like that. And definitely it's not just limited to Islamophobic incidents, but we have seen a rise in anti-Semitic sentiments and racist sentiments publicly lately in city of Kingston, and not to discount the homophobic and transphobic comments, which is also an ongoing problem. So the idea is that this bylaw will help us at least create a dent in that systemic approach of people questioning or attacking the excluded community members verbally.
Thank you. And through your chair. So this would go on top of any other legal ramifications there would be for these kinds of hate crimes, for lack of a better term, or these kinds of things. So presumably police and bylaw would lay charges on top of and fines on top of what other legal problems there would be, correct? So I'm understanding.
I am not able to speak to that at this point.
Okay.
So I like I said, we have to wait for the detailed report on like whether it's going to be parallel to current provincial or federal legislations, or is it going to be on top of it, or is it completely separate? This is all currently being studied and in process of making. So like, I'm not going to jump the gun right now and promise something which is not going to happen. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate.
Now to Sunita.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. A quick question I had, Mohammed, was in terms of youths from different backgrounds and the integration with the Muslim youth. Is there going to be separate programming, or are we going to have something so that there is there's integration and a safe space for all of them to be able to share what their experiences are?
Thank you, Chair, through you. Sunita, it's a really good question. I really appreciate that. The intention for this program would specifically be to work with elected representatives, which in this case would be council and mayor, and creating this in mentorship and a fellowship program with systemically excluded groups. So what we will be working on is creating a model where different intersection of the community groups can sign up for a certain period of time to work as a youth fellowship with counselors who are going to volunteer. So as it's done in Toronto, it's like it's not mandatory for the every counselor, but this offer is placed to all of the counselors on a different term basis. As far as I so far that I've done research on is there are 1, 2, and 3 years terms for counselors to volunteer for, and in that there are different kind of programs. However, how Toronto is done, because of the larger systemically excluded population there, they have specific program for Black youth, Filipino youth, Tamil youth, and Muslim youth, and other intersections. But for Kingston, we are trying to develop a program that is going to target all intersections of youth under one umbrella, mainly because we have a small number of council members who like, even if all of them agree to volunteer to mentor, we will only be able to place a certain number of youth once at a time, and we also don't want to overburden the council with that. But then also we want to create a space where different intersection of youth are also integrating together. How the model will look like is something that is going to be once the motion is approved through council, then we will be working on. And at this point, we are just asking the EDI committee to make this recommendation to City Council to have a study done, a research done on how this youth fellowship program will look like for City of Kingston.
Thank you, Mohammed. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Now I do see Hal's hand, but I did see Councillor Steffen's hand up first. So I'll give you the chance to speak.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Sorry, Hal. So my last name is pronounced Stephen, just since we are equity, diversity, and inclusion. No worries, no hard feelings
Noted.
at all. Just correcting respectfully. So I have a question about one of the parts of the motion where it was suggesting that the city clerk continue seeking diversity for advisory committees, boards, etc. So sort of a two-parter. So first part of the question, I'm wondering, how has that been going? So if we're reaching out to different communities, and I understand we're talking about Muslim communities specifically here, but I think it's not too far of a stretch to sort of wonder bigger picture. How has that recruitment been going? Do we have any information on who has actually applied for these committees? And is that something that we can find out if we don't know yet? That's the first question. I'll ask the second one after that. Thank you.
I see Councillor Souza is raising his hand, so I'm gonna let him speak on that one.
Are you sure? Thank you, Chair, through you. Are you sure, Mohammed? If you want to go first, I'd be happy to get your oversight because I was a participant in that process, but perhaps as an outside third party, you'd have a better insight into that, and then I can comment after. So please go first. And apologies to Hal, but I think this is important.
No. Chair River, through you, so we just went through this process of nomination committee, and there are certain learnings that we need to reflect on and see how we can make it more inclusive. This is the first time the city of Kingston actually went into that direction. And also another specific initiative that I want to highlight is the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, where we worked very closely with the EDI committee and also Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee to propose a recommendation for honorarium for members so that we can have more equitable voices represented on the advisory committee. So the idea is that we will be studying the outcomes at the end of 2023, and we also have the vision that hopefully we will be able to implement the learnings from that to all committees and boards in future, mainly because if the volunteering is expected from all community members, specifically individuals who may not have the privilege of volunteering their time because they're working 2 and 3 jobs to make their ends meet, by not offering any kind of support or any honorarium, we are actually deliberately excluding their voices from these advisory committees and boards. While it's really important to have these voices represented, because like, how can we bring change if we are not hearing from the people who are experiencing those challenges? Like, not discounting at all these amazing volunteers all across the board who have been volunteering, and like this committee itself, all the members of public are volunteer members, but definitely, like we all agreed as the EDI advisory committee that there is a need to create more space for that. And the second part of the question, second part of my answer to Councillor Stevens' question is, we did reach out to different community groups, specifically while a clerk office drafted different type of communications for different community groups. And we collaborated with different departments to shortlist different community organizations specifically to reach out to them. And then EDI office also send individual emails requesting support from several indigenous leaders, several cultural organizations, and also different other organizations that work with marginalized community groups. Not only that, but we also reached out to several community leaders and activists all across the board, asking them to promote it, because we did not want to make an assumption that just because it's on city's website or city social media and other mass media options, it's going to reach to everyone. Um, However, there is an opportunity here, and I'll let Councillor Tuzo speak to it even further, that we have learned certain things that may impact the way we will do it in future. Uh, Having said that, I feel that this has been little bit better in terms of inclusiveness in recruitment, but definitely miles to go before we can say that we have reached our goal of creating more inclusive advisory committees. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Toza, do you mind if I just ask a clarifying question before we continue? So from what Mohammed said and what you're about to speak to, of those who were identified as diversity seeking applicants, I'm wondering how many. I don't know if we know that yet, but that's part of it. But I'm also wondering how many were actually selected for committees or boards or such. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through you, and address what Mohammed said and what Councillor Stephen is asking. I assume that this is going to come up at council as well. I was vice chair of that committee, and the challenge that we had as a committee was on self-disclosure of being from an equity or diverse community. So when there was disclosure of that, we absolutely took that into a major consideration when we made committees, as well as skill sets and all the other factors that we would look at. So if someone identified as being from a traditional diverse community, so we looked at gender, we looked at race, ethnic origins, religion, all the other factors there. The problem and the real challenge the committee had, and I'll have a series of recommendations along with Councillor Hassan and working with Mohammed's office on how to improve the process, is we didn't have a lot of self-disclosure on the committee. So we had very limited lenses within which to view diversity. Oftentimes it was just people that use their honorific of Ms. or Mr. That's a narrow lens within which to view diversity. I'm of the opinion that if we want to have community voices, it doesn't just need to be gender diversity, albeit we need that, but we also need to have diversity on a wide spectrum of ways of looking at identity. The committee didn't have a lot of that information. So when we made our decisions, we made it on the self-disclosure of individuals when they talked about who they were. There's also a lens I'd like to sort of recognize that we are a body of government, and historically governments have not been the friendliest to people who have been historically diverse. So how do we encourage people? And we want those voices. We want to amplify those voices. So this is a challenge also. I'm going to ask council and my other fellow councillors and our equity office is, how do we encourage people to self-disclose if they're from a community that is not, that we want to hear more out of, to a level of government, which historically, I don't blame them for not trusting us. Generally, if they do experience oppression, it's not just from a broader capitalist system, but it's also from our political system, and we are the face of that political system. So it lends itself to some challenges. So how do the committees look? In aggregate, they look very diverse on the lens of which we could evaluate diversity that we knew about. But committee by committee, there's a lot of things we don't know. Like, we don't know the diversity of the planning committee. We don't know the diversity of some of the committees because we were going in with very limited information of the amount of diversity within that committee. So I would say we did our due diligence. The six of us, we read through 2,000 pages of applications, which is as fun as it sounds. But we only could know what we were disclosed, and that was a limitation of the process. Now, I really want to make the process better. for the next time we have a nominations meeting going forward, and making sure that our committees are reflect the diversity of our community, and in fact, I think even amplify the diversity of our community. But Councillor Stephen, was it perfect? We didn't have perfect information. Did we do our due diligence? I think we, as councillors, thought we did, and I think Mohammed was quite satisfied with that. And we had those conversations during that meeting too. We spent about 20 minutes of that meeting just saying, are these committees diverse enough? Did we take a look at these lenses? It was something that really weighed on me afterwards, and I had a follow-up meeting with Councillor Hassan about it. And I'm going to meet with Mohammed later on in the month, because I'm not fully. I'm satisfied we did a good job. I'm not satisfied we did the best job we could, to answer that question.
Thank you for that. Do you have anything to say, Councillor Stephen?
Yes, please. Sorry, just briefly. So I think
Go ahead.
To keep this conversation on track with what we're supposed to be talking about, I think taking into consideration what Mohammed has said, what Councillor Toza has said, and the issues with it's called the nominations committee, doing the best they can, but being very limited. I think that for future discussion, maybe there's something here that we need to explore and dig a little deeper into, because the motion to continue, that the city clerk continue seeking diversity is great, but if that's as far as we get, that's not enough. So I'd just like to put that out there for future discussion. Thank you.
So I'm just going to make a comment on what Councillor Tozo had said. First off, although the process wasn't there, I do really appreciate, and I was listening into that meeting about how you were like raising your voice to like make diversity known in a lot of these committees. And it was something that I really, really appreciated. Sorry, 2 seconds, lost my train of thought. Also, one of the things I was actually thinking even before this, when I was going through the application process on the website, was that there really aren't any like demographic collection. And with that data, as long as we're making it optional, because I don't want people to be forced to disclose, if it's equitable, I think that collecting those demographics as well as those kind of 3 questions might be really important, because then we're actually asking. It's kind of like an interview, right? Like when you're in an interview, you can see the face of the person, but when you're just answering, like you're not going to necessarily think about disclosing something like that. So I think that Mohammed has something to say in response to that.
For the record, we had the link to voluntary disclosure, but I understand that it was really hard to access it because it was placed at the left side of the web page of application. So this is something that we will be working on with Clerk Office and ISNT to see how we can make it more prominent in terms of application. But we did have the opportunity for voluntary disclosure. We have also started implementing the voluntary disclosure process, not just for the council's appointed advisory committees and boards, but also for the staff that are being hired. So there is an opportunity here again for us to review where to place that link, or should it be part of the actual application. Like I said, there are a number of learnings that we have shortlisted that we will be discussing once we will go into the discussion of how the process went. I want to highlight one thing, that this is the first time after that recommendation that was made by Clerk Office that we had any such thing done with any of the nomination committee process. So like it's like as Councillor Tuzo said, it may not be perfect, but it is the first step in the right direction for sure. And we will be sitting together and reviewing it and bringing back some of the specific recommendation on how we can change that process and how we can create even more opportunities for equity seeking groups to be part of this process. Thank you.
And then I'm going to just make another really quick comment, and then I'm going to move over to Sunita because I think that Sunita has a response, and then I'm going to go over to Hal. So just one more thing. I think that also when we're collecting more specific information, because I found in the process that I almost wanted to repeat myself through those 3 boxes. It was hard to kind of differentiate, especially as someone with lived experience and like volunteerism. Where do I put which one, right? I also think that that can also help streamline and make the process a lot easier when we're actually like going through all of those applications. The other thing just goes back to the like paying people with lived experience. I just wanted to like wholeheartedly, because like I was shedding a tear while you were talking about that, wholeheartedly support that and just like celebrate it, because it is so important, especially myself personally as someone who works primarily as a lived experience consultant, and that is often sometimes a source of income, and as someone who is disabled, it is just like so important that we're paying people for their time, especially when they're disclosing or they're working on something that involves that kind of sensitivity. So just like, thank you so much for making that decision and making that a part of it.
I know,
go
like
ahead.
you asked Sunita to go next, but I just want to add one thing very important, that if anyone who deserves to be thanked for this initiative, the first is this group, this advisory committee. The recommendation came through this advisory committee with help of a delegation that came from a group of undergrad students from Queen's University. So like there are 2 first initial groups that we should be thanking. So these 2 students from Queen's University's undergrad program and this EDI committee that made this recommendation to City Council, and of course then the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, who endorsed the recommendation of EDI committee, and then definitely the City Council, who agreed to it. By all means, that it was a collective effort of so many like-minded individuals, and I still remember the moment of vulnerability that was shared in this committee. That was really, really eye-opening for most of us, and we were able to take it back on so many different levels and discuss how important it is to have deliberate and careful effort to bring diverse voices to the table, because that's when we get this kind of insight. So yeah, thank you for all the amazing work you all have been doing, and making sure that we stay in line and follow the guidance of this committee. Thank you.
That's progress. Wonderful. Councillor Tozo, it seems like you want to respond to that, or?
Yeah, I thank you, your chair, through you, and I apologize to Sunita and Hal because I know you guys have been waiting. But I even said at one point during the deliberations that we needed to involve the committee more on reviewing this process and finding more recommendations, because there was so much I learned going through this the first time that I think a lens of equity, diversity, inclusion could have aided so much in selecting the committee. I think that we did an okay job. We can do better. Thank you.
That is great attitude. Now I'm going to move to Sunita because I believe that they have a response. And then Hal, I am so sorry. Your question is burning. We will get to you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. First of all, I just wanted to really commend the work of the selection committee for not discounting lived experience, which is something very often, right? When we get so caught up in the diversity of identities, we forget about the diversity that each identity has a lived experience, and which is where then that voice comes, and which we're not always aware of. But and this was just more of a comment. I believe Councillor Tuzo, you had mentioned something about that historically groups that have again been marginalized or racialized or discriminated against. So trust is going to have to be built over time, right? Like one-off settings or meetings is not going to do it. So this is going to have to be a continuum. And I'm really encouraged to see, again, with Mohammed at the helm of this and the support of the City of Kingston, if we keep reminding and if we keep making sure that the message is getting back out there to the community over time, that trust that has been eroded will be rebuilt. So really important to make sure that these messages are being captured and shared widely. So that's all that I wanted to share.
That is such a great point. Councillor Tozo?
Sorry, just to comment on that. Yeah, I think, and Chair, through you, I think a point of these committees is not just equity, but it's exaggerating voices that haven't been in government. And I see nothing wrong with that. If we have more of an amplification from groups that have been skeptical of government, I'm fine with that. And I want to amplify those voices. And that will require a lot of trust building on the part of us as representatives of government to build those bridges into communities so they do feel comfortable. I was always encouraged when I saw some self-disclosure, and it's like, you trust us enough to disclose your lived experience. We're starting to do something right. Well, let's do more of that, right? So thank you.
All right, and now to Hal.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I've got basically a clarification question, which probably bespeaks my ignorance of municipal processes. I was looking at the NCCM municipal recommendations, which was sent out, and there was one, number 60, which talked about redirecting funding alternative measures to policing and municipal budget. So my clarification question is, I know there's a lot going on with the police in conjunction with KCHC in combating racism, etc. But I'm wondering why that was not on our table here. Like, is our EDI advisory committee something separate from the policing, or should that recommendation be part of what we're looking at?
Chair Hill, through you. So there were two municipal recommendations. It was not one that we did not touch here. One was the recommendation number 56, which was municipalities provide dedicated funding for local community-based anti-Islamophobia initiatives, and number 60, redirect funding towards alternative measures to police in municipal budgets. So these two are the reason why my office deferred from making a recommendation on this through EDI committee is twofold. One is definitely there is some scope limitations for us from the EDI and city as a corporation, but definitely number 60, which is about alternating measures to policing in municipal budgets, is something that council can look into at their level in budgeting area, but a little bit out of scope from the work that we do from City of Kingston. While Kingston Police Service and City of Kingston is always seen as one big umbrella organization, we are two separate entities. Like, the budget does come from us, but we don't have any jurisdiction as staff over the processes and the day-to-day work that Kingston Police provides. We do have a cordial relationship. We have a very supportive staff from Kingston Police that is always ready to work with us closely, but that's where our partnership stops. We do not have, at least at this level, to make any kind of policing related recommendation. However, for 56th recommendation on providing municipalities, that was when then when City Council back in February 2022, when they passed this motion, there was another part of that motion that approved the budget of funding for um, supporting a community fund for um, combating Islamophobia that they allocated. So that's why you are not seeing this recommendation here, because that action was already taken immediately by City Council, and they asked us to review the remaining recommendations. Um, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mohammed. And to my point of earlier as well, I know Kingston Police are doing a lot of things in the area, EDI, also with KCHC. So thank you for the clarification.
Wonderful. So are there any more questions or comments from the committee? No? Okay. And are there any comments from the public? Do we have anybody from the public here?
Through you, Chair, we do not have any members of the public today.
Okay. So do we consider this motion? I'll ask for a mover. Councillor Toso, and a seconder. Hal. Wonderful. Okay. Do we create a vote? I'm so sorry. I'm still new to this. Do we have a vote?
Yes, if there's the committee has an opportunity to deliberate. If there's any further comments or any further questions, they can do so at this time. Otherwise, you can go ahead and call the vote.
Okay. So I don't think we have any of those. So I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor? All opposed? Awesome. Seems unanimous. All right. So I don't think we have any other agenda items. And I don't think we have any motions at all or notices of motion. And there is no other business. So the date and time of the next meeting is to be determined. And I guess we'll go to adjournment. So for a vote of adjournment, mover. Oh, go ahead, Mohammed. I might be missing something.
No, you're not. But I want to take this opportunity before this committee adjourns, that there will be some of the committee members who will be returning for the next year, and then some of you will be moving on to other initiatives and roles. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being the initiator of change through EDI Advisory Committee. You were the first group of people who came together. So so thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for being the leader of a significant change for the corporation of the city of Kingston. While you may not be back at this EDI committee as advisory members, but you're always welcome to connect with us. I really want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for all the amazing work. I cannot be grateful enough to be able to work with this amazing group of people, and really looking forward to working with the next cohort of advisory committee. So really, really, really thankful for all the amazing things we have done together. However, miles to go before we can say we have done our work, which we will continue doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is a wonderful comment. And again, thank you for your work as well, Mohammed. I'm so glad that this committee is a thing, and that we're doing really great work and making really great change. So right now, I'm going to call for the adjournment of the meeting. Can I get a mover? Councillor Tozo. and a seconder. Sunita, awesome. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.